Sparta, many children's, many blessings, starting from the Gladiator. Chapter 41. According to the previous agreement, Crixus took the lead. This red-skinned barbarian let out a roar and charged out, heading straight for anvil. Two iron towers colliding, that was the audience's favorite spectacle. Octavius followed closely on Crixus's right rear, holding his large shield to protect the side, guarding against Hammer sneaking an attack from the flank. Saxa slanted out toward the left front, her target clear Viper. A woman versus a skinny man, just watching it was exciting. And Marcus? He actually stood still in place without moving. The short sword hung by his leg, the shield tilted slightly forward, but his eyes went past the charging people in front and locked straight onto Spider at the very back. To catch the thieves, first catch the king. He understood this principle. 50 steps. 40 steps. 30 steps. Bang. Crixus and anvil collided solidly. Shield against shield, the sound was muffled like thunder. Sand and dust shot up. Both staggered half a step back, then roared and crashed into each other again. Crixus cursed loudly, anvil growled low in his throat. Their two heavy swords swung and hacked at each other, sparks flying everywhere. Hammer wanted to help his brother from the side, but Octavius's door-like giant shield had already blocked over. The giant used the shield face to clang block the slash, then swung his sword horizontally in return, forcing Hammer to retreat quickly. On the other side, Saxa had already tangled with Viper. Daggers against short blades, all fast moves. The two leaped and jumped on the sand, blade lights dazzling the eyes, the ding-ding-dang-dang sounds dense like rain. Viper's moves were sinister and poisonous, specifically targeting the throat, eyes, and crotch. Saxa's blade work was more straightforward, her chops carrying wind, very powerful. It looked evenly matched. But Marcus knew clearly that Saxa was holding back her strength. Her real ability was more than what she was showing now. 20 steps. Spider started to move. He didn't charge toward Marcus. Instead, he moved sideways, spinning the net in his hand, whooshing faster and faster. The black net ropes made a strange woo-woo sound in the air, the iron hooks flashing in and out. He wanted to seal Marcus's movement. Marcus moved too. He neither retreated nor charged forward. Instead, he suddenly slanted toward the right front, heading straight for the southwest corner guarded by the Shadow Brothers. This move stunned quite a few people. Spider clearly didn't expect Marcus to run that way. His net spinning motion slowed by half a beat. In that half beat, Marcus had already dashed out more than 10 steps. "Stop him!" Spider shouted in a sharp voice. Viper wanted to break free, but Saxa's blade suddenly became fast and fierce again, tangling him tightly. Hammer was stuck by Octavius and couldn't get away. Anvil and Crixus were fighting fiercely, eyes red. The only ones who could move were the Shadow Brothers. The two exchanged a glance and raised their hands at the same time. Swish. Swish. Two cold lights flew from their hands, not throwing knives, but rope darts. One left and one right, one high and one low, completely sealing off the angles Marcus could dodge. Marcus had been prepared for this long ago. Danger perception had sounded the alarm before the rope darts were thrown. His body suddenly lunged forward, rolling twice on the sand. The two rope darts swish-swish grazed past his back and scalp, nailing into the sand behind him. Missed. The Shadow Brothers flicked their wrists, about to retract the darts and throw again. But Marcus didn't give them the chance. He sprang up from the sand and continued charging toward the southwest corner. There, an inconspicuous wooden door was ajar, with light from the corridor outside leaking through the crack. "He wants to run!" Someone in the stands shouted at the top of their lungs. "Coward! Kill him!" Curses exploded like a pot boiling over. Marcus ignored them all. He rushed to the wooden door and kicked it hard. Behind the door were not corridors. There were two people. Two gladiators wearing Nodi's training camp leather armor, gripping short spears, exactly the seventh man and eighth man that Nodi's had secretly prepared. The two clearly didn't expect the door to be suddenly kicked open and froze for a moment. Marcus didn't freeze. He thrust his shield forward with a clang, knocking away the short spear thrust by the man on the left. His right short sword stabbed out along the edge of the shield, going straight for the opponent's throat. Pucci. The sword tip pierced into flesh, blood spurted out. The man clutched his neck and collapsed with a gurgle. The man on the right reacted, sweeping his short spear horizontally at Marcus's waist. Marcus retreated half a step. The spear tip grazed past his leather armor. He grabbed the spear shaft and yanked it hard toward himself, while his knee slammed upward viciously. Crack. The sound of the nasal bone shattering was crisp and chilling. The man screamed and let go. Marcus seized the short spear and threw it backhand. The short spear Pucci pierced through the man's chest, nailing him firmly to the doorframe. 2 seconds later, both men were down. The stands fell into dead silence for an instant. Then, even crazier roars erupted. Well done. Fucking clean. This is what gladiators should be. Marcus had no time to listen to these. He turned around and charged back onto the sand field. By now, the field had already turned into complete chaos. Crixus and Anvil were still clashing head-on. Both had blood on them. Anvil had a sword wound on his left shoulder, blood gushing out. Crixus had a cut on his forehead from the shield edge, blood covering half his face, making him look even more ferocious. On Octavius's side, Hammer was clearly no match. He was forced back step by the giant. His shield was full of dents and almost deformed. Saxa and Viper were fighting fiercely, but Marcus could see that Saxa was deliberately stalling, giving Viper the illusion that I can win. And Spider. He was dragging his large net, quickly approaching Marcus. You're looking for death. Spider said in a hoarse voice, spinning the net in his hand with a whooshing sound. You think killing two trash means you can turn the tables? My net, you dodged it once, but you won't dodge it a second time. Marcus ignored him. His eyes quickly scanned the entire field. The Shadow Brothers had already retrieved their rope darts and were flanking him from left and right. Surrounded from 3 sides. System. Marcus said silently in his heart. Exchange for agility enhancement, beginner, ... Exchange successful, 700 points consumed. Current points, 150. Agility upgraded to beginner enhancement level. A heat flow whoosh rushed into his legs. Marcus immediately felt his body become much lighter, and his reactions became sharper. Chapter 42. He took a deep breath and gripped the short sword tightly. Spider made the first move. That black net whooshed down toward his head, covering a huge area and sealing off all paths forward, backward, left, and right. Almost at the same time, the Shadow Brothers also fired their rope darts, one left and one right, shooting straight at Marcus's calves, forcing him to jump right into the net. The coordination was flawless. Gasps sounded from the stands. Lucretia shot to her feet, her nails digging into her palms. The corner of Batiatus's mouth curled into a cold smile. Crixus glanced over distractedly, his face turning pale in an instant. Octavius roared and tried to rush over to help, but Hammer desperately clung to him. Saxa. She suddenly slipped up. When Viper made a feint attack, she accidentally slipped under her feet and fell backward. Viper's eyes flashed with murderous intent. His dagger stabbed straight at her throat. But the moment Saxa fell, her left hand slammed against the ground. Her right leg shot upward like a scorpion tail and kicked Viper's wrist with perfect accuracy. Ah! Viper cried out in pain. The dagger flew out of his hand. Saxa seized the chance to flip and leap up. Her short blade drew a cold, sharp arc. Pucci. Viper's throat was slashed open. Blood sprayed all over Saxa's face. She didn't even look at the collapsing corpse and turned to charge at Spider. But it was too late. The net had already fallen. Marcus didn't jump. He did something that left everyone dumbfounded. He lunged forward, but not toward the ground. He lunged straight at Spider himself. The instant before the net completely covered him, he pressed his body tightly against the sand and slid right between Spider's spread legs. The net whooshed down onto empty air, covering only sand. Spider froze completely. Marcus had already slid behind him. He flipped up, and his short sword stabbed viciously into Spider's back. "Watch out!" One of the Shadow brothers cried out in alarm. Spider barely managed to twist his body to dodge. The sword blade Pucci stabbed into his right shoulder, deep enough to see bone. "Ugh!" He screamed and let go of the net ropes, staggering backward. Marcus pulled out the sword and kicked the back of his knee hard. Spider thudded to his knees. Marcus followed up with another stab, piercing his heart. The second one down. The stands erupted in cheers like a tsunami. The Shadow brothers' faces turned as black as the bottom of a pot. They exchanged a glance and simultaneously threw away their rope darts. Swish! They drew short swords from their waists. It looked like they were going for close quarters combat. Marcus turned to face the two of them. 2 against 1. But he wasn't panicked. Because Saxa had arrived. She stood beside Marcus, casually wiped the blood off her face, and grinned, 2 against 2. Now it's fair. The Shadow brothers didn't speak. They charged fiercely from left and right. The two had perfect teamwork. Their moves were identical, clearly practiced together for years. Short swords stabbed, slashed, flicked, and chopped. The angles were tricky and fast. Marcus and Saxa stood back to back, each taking on one. With the agility enhancement, Marcus's speed was noticeably faster. He no longer purely defended and began to seize the initiative to attack. His short sword moved like a viper flicking its tongue. Every thrust went straight for vital points. The Shadow brother opposite him quickly realized something was wrong. This guy in black leather armor, how did his speed suddenly become so much faster? In one moment of carelessness, Marcus's sword Pucci pierced through his abdomen. The man looked down at the blade buried in his body, his face full of disbelief, and slowly collapsed. The third one. Saxa's side was also resolved. She delivered a fierce chop that knocked away her opponent's sword, then kicked him hard in the chest. While he staggered back, her short blade flashed across his throat like lightning. The fourth one. Now, only anvil, hammer, and Crixus were left on Notice's side. Marcus turned to look. Crixus and anvil were still locked in battle, but anvil was clearly done. Excessive blood loss made his movements slower and slower. Crixus seized the opening, delivered a heavy chop that shattered his shield, and the second sword Pucci cut through his neck. The fifth one. Hammer saw his brother die miserably and let out a beast-like grief-stricken roar. He pounced madly at Crixus. But Octavius caught up from behind and Pucci stabbed through his back hard. The sixth one. Over. Marcus panted heavily and looked around the sand field. 6 corpses lay scattered. Fresh blood dyed patches of the white sand crimson. Crixus was covered in blood, leaning on his sword and breathing heavily. Octavius had taken a hit on his shoulder. His leather armor was torn, but the wound wasn't serious. Saxa had almost no injuries except for the blood splashed on her face. The stands were filled with deafening cheers. Batiatus! Batiatus! They won! Freedom! Give them freedom! The host walked onto the sand with a forced smile, cleared his throat, and was about to announce the victory. Marcus's heart suddenly tightened. Danger perception screamed a frantic warning. Watch out! He roared hoarsely. Almost at the same time, 2 more men burst out from the wooden door at the southwest corner. They weren't gladiators. They were men wearing arena guard uniforms, holding crossbows. Notice's backup plan. Saxa's face changed drastically. They even bribed the guards. The clear click of crossbows being loaded rang out. 2 crossbows, aimed respectively at Marcus and Crixus. "Get down." Marcus violently tackled Crixus. The 2 rolled together on the sand. Swish. Swish. The crossbow bolts grazed their backs and thud-thud nailed into the sand. Octavius roared and charged at the guards, but the distance was too far. He couldn't make it in time. Saxa wanted to rush over, but the other guard turned his crossbow toward her. She had to stop abruptly. The stands erupted in an uproar. Cheating. So shameless. Stop. Stop it now. But no one dared to actually enter the field. Batiatus stood up, his face as dark as water, but he didn't speak clearly. This twist had exceeded his expectations too. The 2 guards skillfully reloaded and aimed again. Marcus and Crixus were still lying on the sand and couldn't get up in time. Was it over? At this critical moment, a figure rushed down from the noble seats. It was Lucretia. She lifted her skirt, ignoring everything, flipped over the railing, jumped onto the sand, and spread her arms to block in front of Marcus. "Stop right there." Her voice was hoarse from shouting. "I am Batiatus's wife. You dare touch me." The guards froze. The crossbows were pointed at Lucretia, fingers on the triggers, but they didn't dare press down. In that split second, Marcus and Crixus leaped up. Octavius had already reached the guards. His bowl-sized fist bang smashed one guard's face bones. He seized the crossbow and smashed the stock clang into the other guard's head. Both men collapsed limply. The sandfield fell silent once again. Lucretia turned around, looked at Marcus, her eyes complex as if filled with 1,000 emotions, then her body went soft and she fainted, clearly overwhelmed by fear. Marcus quickly caught her and handed her to Saxa, who had rushed over. Only then did the host regain his senses. He cautiously stepped onto the sand. The victors are Batiatus training camp. The cheers rang out again, but much weaker than before. The heart-stopping scene just now had left many spectators feeling uneasy. Marcus ignored the cheers. He raised his head and looked toward the main stand. Batiatus was staring at him. His eyes were as cold as a knife pulled from an ice cave. The performance match was won. But the real contest had probably only just begun. 43, Chapter 43. Chapter 43. The victorious cheers were still echoing in the arena, wave after wave, but Marcus's heart kept sinking. He supported the fainted Lucretia, his eyes fixed dead on Batiatus on the main stand. That old fox had a smile on his face, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. His gaze was as cold as ice shards. The host was still shouting at the top of his lungs, spitting everywhere, announcing the victory. The nobles in the stands had already started to leave for them. The show was over and it was time to attend the following banquet. Who cared about the life and death of gladiators? Marcus handed Lucretia over to the personal maids who had rushed over. "Take her back," Marcus said in a low voice. "Be careful." The maids nodded. Together with another female slave, they supported Lucretia and staggered away. Crixus came over at this time, wiped the blood off his face, and grinned. "We won. Ha ha. According to the plan, we should head to the side door now." Octavius and Saxa also gathered over. All 4 of them were injured, but their eyes were frighteningly bright. The rush from victory hadn't faded yet. "Let's go." Marcus said only one word. They completely ignored the host, who was still chattering away, and didn't go to receive any victory wreaths. That thing was useless. They turned directly toward the side door at the southeast corner of the arena. That was the escape route Crixus had mentioned before. The corridor was pitch black. The air carried a strange mixed smell of mold and blood. Footsteps tap, tap echoed on the stone walls. In the distance came the noisy sound of the audience leaving, like it was behind a layer of fog. Marcus walked at the front, gripping the short sword tightly, his eyes scanning around like searchlights. Strange, danger perception didn't give any warning. But the quieter it was, the more he felt something was wrong. It was too quiet. There should be guards at the side door, either Batiatus's men or guards bribed by nodes. But now, there wasn't a single shadow. Wait. Marcus suddenly stopped. Crixus was stunned. What's wrong? Something's off. Marcus stared at the half-open door ahead. Why is the door open? The side door was only ajar. A bit of light from the alley outside leaked through the crack, looking strangely eerie. I arranged it? Crixus said, his tone a bit anxious. My people should have already lured the guards away. Your people? Saxa raised an eyebrow, her voice full of suspicion. You still have your people? Crixus's face stiffened. What do you mean by that? It means I never trusted you from the beginning. Saxa was not polite at all. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Octavius silently stood beside Marcus, his sword gripped so tightly it creaked. Crixus looked at the three of them and suddenly he laughed. Too late. As soon as he finished speaking, footsteps sounded from both ends of the corridor. Heavy, orderly footsteps, soldiers. From both front and back, more than 10 fully armed Roman soldiers rushed out, holding short swords and shields. They clang 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 blocked both ends of the corridor tightly. Drop your weapons. The leading centurion roared. Anyone who resists will be killed without mercy. Marcus slowly turned his head and looked at Crixus. The bit of comrade expression on this guy's face had long disappeared, replaced by a strange smile mixed with triumph and cruelty. You betrayed us. Marcus said, his voice frighteningly calm. Betrayed? Crixus sneered. I just made the smartest choice. Batiatus promised me freedom and 100 denarii. Escape with you? Who knows if the ship will even arrive? And after that? Become savages? Or get sold again? As he spoke, he backed away until he was inside the soldiers' protective circle, only then feeling safe. Sorry about that, brothers. Crixus shrugged, looking very smug. If you have to blame someone, blame yourselves for being too naive. Marcus didn't speak anymore. He looked at the soldiers closing in from front and back, his mind turning rapidly. 30 soldiers, fully armed. The three of them, covered in wounds, most of their stamina already spent. Fight head on? A dead end. Drop your weapons. The centurion roared again. Final warning. Saxa looked at Marcus, her eyes asking, fight or not? Marcus gently shook his head. He loosened his hand. With a clang, the short sword fell to the ground. Octavius and Saxa exchanged a glance, gritted their teeth, and also threw down their weapons. Wise. Wise. Crixus clapped his hands in delight. Don't worry, Master Batiatus said he won't kill you. After all, you just won the performance match. You're heroes. It would be a pity if you died, right? The soldiers swarmed forward and locked the three of them in iron chains with clack-clack sounds. Marcus didn't resist. He let the cold iron chains lock around his wrists, his eyes fixed on Crixus the whole time. You will regret this. Regret? Crixus laughed loudly. When you're nailed to the cross and left to dry in the wind, I'll already be in some manner drinking wine and playing with slave girls. Ha ha ha. The soldiers escorted the three of them out. Outside the side door there was no small alley at all. It was a wider passage leading straight to the dark and gloomy underground prison of the arena. Marcus was roughly pushed into a cell. The iron door clanged shut. The sound of the lock falling was especially harsh. The cell was pitifully small, 3 stone walls and 1 iron grate. The floor was covered with moldy straw. The air carried a foul stench mixed with urine and blood. There were dried blood stains on the walls, and blurry words scratched with fingernails, maybe a name, or maybe help. Octavius and Saxa were locked in the adjacent cell. They could hear voices but couldn't see each other. Marcus. Saxa's voice came from next door, a bit muffled. Here. You okay? I'm fine. Marcus leaned against the wall and checked the iron chains on his wrists. They were very thick, the locks very sturdy. Impossible to open with bare hands. That bastard. Saxa cursed, her voice full of anger. I should have killed him on the sand if I had known. Saying this now is useless. Marcus said. Think about how to get out. How to get out? Saxa laughed coldly. Iron chains, iron door, at least 20 soldiers outside. Unless a god comes to save us. Marcus didn't reply. He was thinking rapidly in his head. When exactly did Crixus betray them? Before the performance match? Or after? Why didn't Batiatus kill them on the spot? What was the point of keeping them alive? And Lucretia, did she really rush down to block the crossbow bolts, or was it an act? One question after another swirled in his mind like a tangled mess. Time passed little by little. There were no windows in the cell. So he didn't know how long had passed. He could only roughly judge time by how often the torches in the corridor were changed. They had been changed about 3 times, each interval around 2 hours. 6 hours had passed. It should be completely dark outside. Footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. It wasn't the neat thud-thud of soldiers, but lighter, more casual steps. Marcus raised his head. 2 soldiers stopped in front of the cell and clatter opened the door. Come out. One soldier said impatiently. Master wants to see you. Marcus didn't move. Who's master? Master Batiatus, the soldier glared at him. And honored guests. Hurry up, don't make the master wait. Chapter 44. Marcus stood up slowly, dragging the clanking fetters as he walked out of the cell. The soldiers led him through a maze-like underground passage, up a flight of stairs, and arrived at the ground level of the arena. This was no longer the prison. It was the arena's attached building, the banquet hall. The moment the door opened, noise and heat waves rushed over. The banquet hall was terrifyingly large. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, shining so brightly they dazzled the eyes. Silk curtains hung on the walls, and thick carpets covered the floor. Long tables were filled with food and drink, oil glistening roasted suckling pigs, tender stewed lamb, fresh dripping fruits, various exquisite pastries, and barrels of wine. The aroma of wine mixed with the smell of meat, drilling straight into the nose. Guests in luxurious togas and long dresses gathered in small groups, chatting and laughing. The air was filled with perfume, roasted meat, and the smell of alcohol, hot and stuffy. This was the nobles' victory banquet. And Marcus, wearing fetters and handcuffs, covered in blood and filth, stood there like a beggar who had wandered into heaven by mistake. All eyes swish-focused on him at once. Low murmurs buzzed around. Is this the Marcus? I heard he killed 3 people by himself today. Doesn't look that impressive though. Why did Batiatus bring him here? Marcus's face showed no expression. His gaze swept across the hall. He saw Batiatus sitting in the most prominent position at the main table, clinking glasses with a middle-aged man in a purple toga. The man was about 40, with a cold and stern face and sharp eyes like knives. He looked like someone who had long held high position. Gracchus. The newly appointed commander of the Roman Senate, the sudden rise of the rebel army had elevated Gracchus's status, Batiatus's business partner, and also Ilithia's husband. Ilithia sat beside Gracchus. She was wearing a deep blue silk long dress today, with a low neckline revealing a large expanse of snow-white cleavage. Her hair was carefully pinned up with pearl hairpins, her makeup exquisite. She half covered her face with a peacock feather fan, but her eyes were staring straight at Marcus. That gaze held curiosity, amusement, and a trace of barely noticeable excitement. Batiatus saw Marcus and smiled, waving him over with an extremely affectionate look. "Come, come, Marcus, come over." His voice was loud. "Let me introduce our distinguished guests, the great hero of today's performance match." A soldier pushed Marcus. He dragged his fetters with a clank-clank and walked to the front of the main table. The sound of iron chains scraping the floor was harsh. But at this moment no one spoke. Everyone was staring at him. "This is Marcus." Batiatus stood up and patted Marcus's shoulder. The action looked affectionate, but the force in his hand was heavy. He survived the whipping rack, killed an overseer with one punch, kicked Crixus down with one foot, and today single-handedly took care of 3 gladiators from Nodes. How about that? Isn't he a true warrior? The guests let out oh sounds of admiration, though it was hard to tell if they were sincere or fake. Gracchus put down his wine cup and looked Marcus up and down. Indeed, not like an ordinary person. He spoke, his voice low and magnetic. "Where are you from, Marcus?" "The East." Marcus said. "The East?" Gracchus raised an eyebrow. "Syria? Judea? Or, even farther?" "Even farther." "Interesting." Gracchus smiled. "A warrior from a distant land shining brightly in Capua's arena. Is this the arrangement of fate, or something else?" There was a hidden meaning in his words. Marcus didn't respond. Batiatus quickly took over. "No matter what it is, he is now my property. Today's victory in the performance match proves his value. I plan to cultivate him well. Who knows, he might become Capua's gladiator star in the future, or even, go to Rome." "Go to Rome." This word made Gracchus's eyes flash. "Quite ambitious, Batiatus. All for serving the honored lords." Batiatus smiled fawningly. "By the way, Marcus, why don't you salute Lord Gracchus? You were able to survive today thanks to the Lord." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "It means," Batiatus lowered his voice, but loud enough for those around to hear, "the 2 guards with crossbows in the performance match were bribed by Nodes. According to the rules, they should have been executed. But Lord Gracchus said today is the founding festival and it is not appropriate to see too much blood, so, he spared their lives." He paused and looked at Marcus, "And spared your life too. After all, if you had killed the guards, even in self-defense, it would have been a serious crime." "So that was it?" Marcus looked at Gracchus. This newly appointed commander was calmly cutting a piece of roasted meat, as if what he had just said was only a trivial matter. "Thank you, my lord," Marcus said. "No need to thank me." Gracchus didn't raise his head. "I only did what I should. However," he put down his knife and fork and looked up at Marcus, "I heard you originally planned to escape today." The banquet hall suddenly fell silent. All eyes swish-focused over again. Batiatus's face changed, but he quickly forced a smile. "My lord is joking. How could Marcus try to escape? He just won the performance match and is about to gain his freedom. What reason would he have to run?" "Is that so?" Gracchus looked at Batiatus. "Then why did my guards catch him at the side door of the arena? Along with 2 other gladiators, Octavius and Saxa." "Oh right, and there was also a female gladiator? Truly, an interesting combination." Cold sweat broke out on Batiatus's forehead. This might be a misunderstanding. He forced a smile. "Marcus and the others just wanted to celebrate." "Yes, celebrate. Celebrating while wearing fetters." Gracchus smiled, his smile very cold. "Batiatus, Do you think I'm easy to fool? I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. Batiatus hurriedly waved his hands. Lord Gracchus, I absolutely didn't mean that. It's just. Just what? Batiatus gritted his teeth, suddenly turned around, and slapped Marcus across the face. The sound was crisp. Marcus's head snapped to the side. Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. Speak. Batiatus roared. Why did you try to run? Was I not good enough to you? I gave you the best treatment, gave you the chance to fight, promised you freedom. And this is how you repay me. He was acting. Marcus saw through it. Batiatus was playing the role of a heartbroken master who was betrayed, trying to shift all the blame onto him. Speak. Batiatus raised his hand for another slap. This time Marcus didn't let him hit. He dodged to the side and looked coldly at Batiatus. Chapter 45. What do you want me to say? Marcus spoke, his voice frighteningly calm. Say that you drugged the food. Say that you hid poison in the sword hilt. Say that you never intended to give us real freedom. The banquet hall exploded. Nonsense. Batiatus's face turned iron blue. How could I do such a thing? This is slander. Whether it's slander or not, we'll know after checking. Marcus said. The kitchen steward Lucius is your distant relative. The sedative powder is locked in the bottom drawer of your study. The poison in the sword hilt should still be with Crixus right now to save his own life, he should be very willing to hand it over. Batiatus's eyes widened, his finger trembling as he pointed at Marcus. You. What about me? Marcus smiled. How do I know? Because I'm not stupid, Batiatus. You treated me as a chess piece, as a tool, as a dog you could discard at any time. But I am not a dog. He turned to Gracchus. Lord Gracchus, you saved my life today. I owe you a favor. But I am still a prisoner, still a slave. No matter what I say, it's useless. I only want to ask one question: who do you believe? All eyes focused on Gracchus. This commander slowly took a sip of wine, then put down the cup. I believe in evidence, he said. He clapped his hands. The side door of the banquet hall opened. 2 soldiers escorted a man inside. It was Crixus. This guy had lost all his daytime arrogance. His face was deathly pale, and his whole body was shaking like chaff. When he saw Batiatus, he pounced over like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. Master! Master, save me! They forced me. They forced me to say. Shut up! Batiatus kicked him away. But it was too late. Gracchus waved his hand. A soldier stepped forward, took out a small clay bottle from his bosom, and a short sword, exactly the fine steel short sword Batiatus had given Marcus. Found on Crixus. The soldier said. He said it was given by Master Batiatus. There is poison in the sword hilt, and the clay bottle contains sedative powder. The banquet hall completely erupted. The nobles whispered among themselves. Their eyes toward Batiatus were full of contempt and vigilance. Drugging gladiators, this broke the rules. Although everyone tacitly accepted that gladiators' lives were worthless, on the surface they still had to talk about fair competition. What Batiatus did was equivalent to slapping all the spectators in the face. Slander! This is slander! Batiatus screamed hoarsely. Crixus hates me. He hates me for not giving him freedom. He's taking revenge. Is that so? Gracchus stood up, walked in front of Crixus, and looked down at him. Tell me, who instructed you? Crixus looked at Batiatus, then at Gracchus. His lips trembled and he couldn't speak. Tell the truth and I'll spare your life. Gracchus said. Lie, and you die right now. Crixus burst into tears and completely collapsed. It was Batiatus. He cried and shouted. He told me to find a chance to kill Marcus during the performance match. He said after it was done he would give me freedom. The poison in the sword hilt was also given by him. He said he would slowly cripple Marcus, so that even if he won the performance match he couldn't go to Rome. Enough! Batiatus roared in fury. Drag this traitor away. Execute him. But no one moved. The soldiers looked at Gracchus. Gracchus nodded. 2 soldiers dragged the screaming Crixus out. Screams echoed in the corridor, gradually fading away until they could no longer be heard. Batiatus's face turned deathly pale. Cold sweat soaked his back. Lord Gracchus, please let me explain. His voice trembled. No need to explain. Gracchus waved his hand. Batiatus, you broke the rules of the arena, deceived the audience, and attempted to murder your own gladiators. Although they are slaves, they are still your property. What you did damages the interests of all gladiator owners. He looked around. Everyone, if we don't deal with Batiatus today, tomorrow someone might drug our gladiators. Once the rules of fair competition are broken, this industry is finished. The nobles nodded one after another and whispered among themselves. Batiatus's legs went soft and he collapsed to the ground. However, Gracchus changed his tone. Today is the founding festival. I don't want to see too much blood. Besides, Batiatus has contributed to Capua's entertainment industry for many years. He walked in front of Marcus and looked at this gladiator wearing handcuffs and fetters. Marcus, you are a warrior. Today you proved your strength and your innocence. Gracchus said. According to the rules, Batiatus should be stripped of his qualifications as a gladiator owner. His property including you should be confiscated. Marcus's heart sank. But Gracchus's next words stunned him. But I have decided to give you a choice. Gracchus said. First, become a public gladiator, under direct management of the Senate. Second. He paused and looked into Marcus's eyes, become my personal guard. I will give you freedom, salary, and dignity. You only need to be loyal to me. The banquet hall fell silent again. Everyone was staring at Marcus. Batiatus raised his head. His eyes were full of venom, as if he wanted to devour Marcus alive. Marcus was silent for a moment. What about my companions? He asked. Octavius, Saxa, and the others. They can all be freed. Gracchus said. Those willing to follow you can become my guards together. Those who don't want to, I can give them freedom and let them leave Capua. This condition was ridiculously good. Marcus stared at Gracchus, trying to read something from this commander's face. But he only saw a pair of deep, calm eyes that showed no emotion. Why? Marcus asked. Because you have value. Gracchus spoke honestly. I can see you are not an ordinary person. I need talent like you. And he glanced at Batiatus collapsed on the ground. Suppressing Batiatus is also beneficial to me. Saving you not only gains your loyalty but also strikes at my opponent. 2 birds with 1 stone. Very straightforward. And very real. Marcus thought for a moment and nodded. I choose the second option. He said. But I have 2 conditions. Speak. First, I want to see my companions first to confirm they are safe. Second, I want all gladiators in Batiatus training camp who are willing to follow me to be granted freedom. Gracchus raised an eyebrow. All. All. Marcus said. About 20 people. Quite the appetite. Gracchus smiled. But I like ambitious people. Fine, I agree. He waved his hand. Unlock his chains. Soldiers stepped forward and clack opened Marcus's handcuffs and fetters. The heavy iron chains clang fell to the ground. Marcus moved his wrists and looked at Gracchus. Thank you, my lord. No need to thank me. Gracchus said. This is a transaction. I give you freedom, you give me loyalty. It's very fair. He turned and looked at the guests. Everyone, today's farce ends here. Batiatus is temporarily detained and will await trial by the Senate. As for Marcus and his companions, from today onward, they are my people. No one dared to object. Gracchus's power in Capua was not something Batiatus could compare to. Chapter 46. The banquet continued. But the atmosphere was completely different. Marcus was brought to the side hall. Octavius and Saxa were already waiting there. The chains on both of them had also been removed. They looked bewildered. "What's going on?" Saxa asked. "Why did that person save us?" "A transaction." Marcus explained simply. Octavius frowned. "Loyalty to him? Can he be trusted?" "Trustworthy for now," Marcus said. "At least better than being in Batiatus's hands." Just as they were talking, the door opened. Ilithyia walked in. She waved away the soldiers at the door, closed the door, then turned around and looked at the three of them. "Congratulations," she said with a smile, her voice soft. "From slaves to free people, and you even climbed onto the most powerful person in Capua. A meteoric rise, Marcus." Marcus didn't speak. Ilithyia walked up to him. Her fingers gently traced across his chest where there were wounds from today's performance match. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "It's fine. My husband rarely treats people this well." Ilithyia lowered her voice and leaned closer. "He has taken a fancy to your potential and wants to train you into a blade. But a blade used for too long will also become dull and break." She leaned even closer, her breath spraying on Marcus's face, carrying the scent of wine. "Be careful. Don't really take yourself seriously. In Gracchus's eyes, you will always be a tool." After saying that, she stepped back and returned to her noblewoman demeanor, as if those words hadn't come from her. "By the way," she seemed to suddenly remember something. "That little healer of yours, Myra, I have already sent someone to bring her out. She is now in my mansion, very safe." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Thank you." "No need to thank me." Ilithyia smiled, her smile full of meaning. "I'm also making an investment. After all, who can say for sure what the future holds?" She turned to leave. When she reached the door, she looked back again. "Come to the mansion tomorrow to report. My husband will arrange your residence and duties." The door clicked shut. Only the three of them remained in the side hall. Saxa whistled softly. "This woman is not simple." Octavius nodded, his expression serious. Marcus walked to the window and looked at the brightly lit Capua outside. From slave to free man. From gladiator to commander's guard. It looked like a meteoric rise. But he knew very clearly in his heart that this was just jumping into a bigger, more exquisite cage. Gracchus saved him not for justice, but for profit. Ilithyia helped him not out of kindness, but for investment. This world has never had free lunches. "What do we do next?" Saxa asked. "First survive," Marcus said. "Then, look for opportunities." "What opportunities?" "Opportunities to leave." Marcus turned around and looked at the two of them. "But not now. Right now we need Gracchus's protection, we need time to recover, we need to accumulate strength." He paused, his voice low but firm. "But one day, we will be truly free, not anyone's slaves, not anyone's tools, but truly free." Octavius and Saxa looked at each other and nodded heavily. Outside the window, founding festival fireworks boom exploded in the night sky. Splendid, but short-lived. Just like the freedom they had just obtained. But at least, they were still alive. As long as they were alive, there was still hope. Marcus clenched his fist, his eyes as firm as iron. Gracchus's mansion was in the northern part of Capua, occupying an entire block. Tall white stone walls, bronze gates, and two marble lions standing at the entrance, not Roman style, but Egyptian imports, showing the owner's distinctive taste. Guards in trim togas stood straight, their eyes sharp as eagles. Marcus stood in front of the gate and looked up at the complex reliefs on the lintel. One day ago, he was a gladiator wearing fetters. Now, he was wearing a clean linen short robe with a short sword at his waist, a gift from Gracchus, standing at the entrance of a senator's mansion. Beside him were Octavius and Saxa. The two had also changed clothes, but they clearly felt uncomfortable. Octavius kept adjusting the shoulder straps of his leather armor, while Saxa kept touching the knife at her waist, the only old item she insisted on keeping. Nervous? Saxa glanced at him sideways. A little. Marcus honestly admitted. What are you afraid of? Saxa elbowed him. Worst case, we fight our way out again. It's not like we haven't killed before. We can't fight our way out this time. Octavius interjected gloomily, his eyes scanning the surroundings. There are at least 50 guards outside. I checked, all veterans, and their positions are very deliberate. Just as they were talking, the bronze gate creak opened. A white-haired steward in a white robe came out and bowed slightly. Mr. Marcus. The master is already waiting for you. Please follow me. The three exchanged a glance and followed the steward through the gate. Damn, inside was even bigger than it looked from outside. The front courtyard was a typical Roman-style garden. The central fountain pool splashed loudly, water sparkling in the sunlight. Marble colonnades surrounded it on all sides, with intricate reliefs carved on the columns. Slaves were pruning flowers and cleaning statues, their movements as light as cats. The air carried the scent of lemon trees and rosemary, sweet and fragrant, a completely different world from the sweat and blood stench of the training ground. Passing through the courtyard, they entered the main residence. The hall had a ceiling height of at least 20 feet. The marble floor was so polished it could reflect a person's shadow. The walls were covered with murals, hunting scenes, mythological stories, rows of ancestral portraits, all with stern expressions. The ceiling was painted with a star map. Crystal chandeliers hung down, candles lit even in broad daylight, burning high-quality beeswax with a sweet, cloying scent. It was so luxurious it was suffocating. Marcus heard Saxa whistle softly beside him. Fuck. She said in a low voice. How much money does this cost? Robbing for a lifetime wouldn't be enough, right? The steward led them through the hall to a heavy oak door. The master is in the study. The steward pushed open the door and stepped aside. Please enter. The study was smaller than the hall but more refined. An entire wall was bookshelves, packed with sheepskin scrolls and papyrus rolls. The air carried the mixed smell of old paper and ink. On the dark oak desk were a bronze ink bottle, an ivory letter opener, and a small statue of the god of war Mars, polished to a shine. Gracchus sat behind the desk. Today he was not wearing that eye-catching purple toga. He had changed into a simple white linen long shirt, looking more casual than last night. But those eyes were still as sharp as knives. When they swept over, they made one's spine go cold. Sit. He pointed to the 3 chairs in front of the desk, his voice neither cold nor warm. Marcus and the other 2 sat down. Gracchus didn't speak immediately. He first slowly looked them over, his gaze like he was appraising value. Did you sleep well? He finally spoke, his tone flat. Not bad. Marcus said. Better than the straw mats in the training ground, right? Much better. Gracchus smiled, a very shallow smile. That's good. Are you satisfied with the residence I arranged for you? Satisfied. Marcus nodded. Thank you, my lord. Last night after the banquet, they were arranged in a mansion near Gracchus's residence. It wasn't big, but it was clean, with separate rooms, hot water and enough food, white bread, stewed meat, fresh fruit. For 3 slaves who had just crawled out of the arena, it was simply like heaven. Good that you're satisfied. Gracchus leaned forward, hands crossed on the table. Now, let's talk about serious matters. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the 3 of them one by one, finally stopping on Marcus. I saved you, gave you freedom, gave you a place to live. According to Roman tradition, you now owe me a favor, not just a favor, but the relationship of patron and client. I am your patron, you are my clients. Understood? Marcus nodded, understood. Good that you understand. Gracchus said. The obligations of clients are loyalty, service, and giving your life when necessary. The patron's responsibility is protection, provision, and giving you opportunities to climb higher. This is a mutually beneficial relationship, but the premise is. He deliberately dragged out the word, loyalty. I understand. Marcus met his gaze. We will be loyal to you. Saying it is not enough. Gracchus took out 3 sheepskin scrolls from the drawer and pushed them over. Sign them. Marcus picked up one and opened it. This was a contract, or rather, a variant of a slave contract. It stated that Marcus voluntarily became Gracchus's protected person, pledged loyalty to Gracchus and his family, obeyed all reasonable orders, and would not betray. In return, Gracchus guaranteed his free status, provided food, lodging, and salary, 10 denarii per month, and offered protection within the limits of the law. Chapter 47. Reasonable orders. This phrase is used beautifully, vague and blurry, anything can be stuffed into it. Any problem? Gracchus asked, his fingers lightly tapping the desk. Marcus raised his head. Obey all reasonable orders. How is this reasonable defined? I define it. Gracchus said indifferently. If you think it's unreasonable, you can raise it. But the final decision is mine. What if we refuse to sign? Then you can leave. Gracchus leaned back. Once you walk out this door, your free status remains valid. But what happens after that, I can't guarantee. Batiatus's remaining followers, Notice's allies, and those nobles who don't like you. Capua is not a big city. It's really not difficult to kill 3 former gladiators. A gentle threat. Marcus stared at the sheepskin scroll, his mind turning rapidly. Signing it meant tying himself to Gracchus's chariot. Not signing. Stepping out the door might mean a dead end. I'll sign. He picked up the quill on the desk, dipped it in ink, and signed his name at the bottom of the sheepskin scroll. Marcus. The Latin letters were a bit crooked, but at least readable. Octavius and Saxa exchanged a glance and also picked up the quill to sign. Gracchus nodded with satisfaction, collected the sheepskin scrolls, and locked them back in the drawer. Very good. Now, we are family. He walked out from behind the desk and paced to the window, hands behind his back as he looked at the courtyard outside. Marcus, do you know why I chose you? Because I won the performance match. Not entirely. Gracchus turned around. Because you are smart. In the arena, you relied not only on brute force but also on your brain. At the banquet, you knew how to seize the opportunity and force Batiatus to show his flaws. I need smart people. He walked back to the desk, pulled out a map from another drawer, and whoosh spread it open. It was a map of Capua, drawn extremely detailed, marking every district, major buildings, and even some underground passages. Batiatus has fallen, but his businesses remain. Gracchus pointed at several locations on the map. The gladiator training camp, the slave market, and his warehouses at the port. These are now ownerless. Marcus stared at the map. You want them? I want order. Gracchus said, his finger lightly tracing across the map. I do not allow the underworld to become chaotic. Batiatus's position needs someone to take over, but it cannot be another Batiatus. He looked at Marcus, his eyes slightly narrowed. I want you to take over his businesses. Marcus was stunned. Me? Yes, you. Gracchus said firmly. You have a gladiator background and can hold the field. You are smart enough to manage the businesses. Most importantly, you are my man. He drew a circle on the map, the training camp, slave market, warehouses, these legitimate businesses. I will arrange people to help you manage. What you need to do is control the underground part, gladiators, enforcers, intelligence network. I want every dirty thing in Capua to be under my control. Marcus understood. What Gracchus wanted was not a guard, but a blade, an eye, a hand reaching into the underworld. What do I get? Marcus asked directly. Besides what is written in the contract, you can also take 20% of the profits from these businesses. Gracchus held up 2 fingers. Additionally, you can build your own team. The gladiators you brought can all be used. Weapons, funds, legal status I will provide. The conditions were so generous they made one's heart uneasy. Why me? Marcus asked again. You have more candidates, more reliable ones. Because they are too reliable. Gracchus smiled, with a hint of sarcasm in his smile. Reliable to the point, they may have their own little thoughts. But you, Marcus, you have no roots, no family. Except for me, you have nowhere to go. People like you are the most reliable. He spoke bluntly and cruelly. Marcus fell silent. I'll give you 3 days to consider. Gracchus waved his hand. Give me your answer in 3 days. During these 3 days, you can move freely, get familiar with Capua. The money has already been sent to your residence, 20 denarii each, as advance salary. He made a gesture to see them off. The steward pushed open the door, ready to lead them out. At the door, Gracchus suddenly spoke again. By the way, Marcus. Marcus turned back. That little healer of yours, Myra. Gracchus spoke as if he had just remembered. My wife likes her very much and has kept her in the mansion for a few days. Don't worry, she is very safe. Marcus's eyes sharpened. Myra had been taken hostage. Marcus felt turmoil in his heart, but his face remained expressionless. Thank you, madam, for taking care of her. After leaving the study and walking through the long corridor back to the front courtyard. The sunlight was so bright it hurt the eyes. As soon as they stepped out the main gate, Saxa cursed in a low voice, that old fox, he really knows how to calculate. Octavius frowned so hard it could crush a fly. He took Myra hostage. I know. Marcus said, his voice calm. Let's go back first and talk. The 3 quickly walked back to last night's residence. Slaves were already cleaning the house. When they saw them return, they respectfully bowed and quietly withdrew. On the table in the living room, there were indeed 3 bulging money bags. Marcus opened one. Inside were 20 shiny new denarii, so new they could reflect a person's face. Really generous with his money. Saxa grabbed her money bag and weighed it in her hand. This should be enough for an ordinary family to live for a year, right? Blood money. Octavius said gloomily. The 3 sat around the table. The atmosphere was a bit heavy. What do we do now? Saxa put her legs up on the table. Really become that old fox's dog? Temporarily, yes. Marcus rubbed his brow. Myra is in his hands. We have no choice. So we just accept it? No. Marcus shook his head. But we have to take it slow. First establish a foothold, accumulate strength, and wait for an opportunity. What opportunity? An opportunity to break free from control. Marcus lowered his voice. But not now. Right now we need his protection, we need money, we need legal status. He paused and looked at the 2 of them. What do you think? If you want to leave, there is still a chance now. Take the money and leave Capua. You can go anywhere. Octavius shook his head without thinking. I'm with you. Saxa grinned. I never miss out on exciting things. Good. Marcus nodded. Then we accept this invitation. But remember, our loyalty is to each other, not to Gracchus. At any time, survival comes first. The three reached out and bumped fists. In the next 2 days, Marcus and the others started wandering around Capua. Using the money Gracchus gave them, they changed into better clothes, ate decent food, and even went to the public bathhouse, a real Roman bathhouse with hot pools, cold pools, steam rooms, and slaves giving massages. Saxa hummed comfortably. Octavius looked uncomfortable the whole time, keeping a straight face. Marcus wasn't idle. He spent more time on investigation. He went to Batiatus's training camp, now sealed off, with a Senate notice posted at the door and red wax seals looking glaring. He went to the slave market and looked at those people chained in iron, price tags hanging around their necks, feeling uneasy in his heart. He also went to the port warehouse district, smelling the salty sea breeze and watching ships of all sizes coming and going. Capua was bigger, more complicated, and deeper than he imagined. On the afternoon of the third day, Marcus went alone to Gracchus's mansion. This time it was not to see Gracchus, but to see Ilithyia. Chapter 48. The steward led him to the back garden of the mansion. It was more private here, filled with blooming roses and lavender, fragrant and intoxicating. In the center was a marble pavilion. Ilithyia was sitting inside drinking tea, her posture elegant like a painting. She was wearing a light green long dress today, her hair loosely pinned up with a few strands falling by her cheek. When she saw Marcus arrive, she put down the gilded porcelain teacup and smiled slightly. Sit. Marcus sat down opposite her. Slaves quietly served tea and snacks, then retreated to stand at a distance. Have you considered it? Ilithyia asked. I accept. A smart choice. Ilithyia picked up the teacup and gently blew on it. My husband is very satisfied. He said you've been wandering around the city these 2 days, getting familiar with the environment. Yes. Did you notice anything? Capua is big, and the water is deep. Marcus spoke honestly. Batiatus has fallen. Many people want to swallow his territory. Noti's training camp is only the obvious opponent. There are other forces stirring things up in secret. Ilithyia nodded. Good insight. So what do you plan to do? First stabilize the training camp. Marcus said. Gladiators are the core. Control the training camp, and you have manpower. With manpower, you can talk about other things. Specifically, I need to see those gladiators. Marcus said. Gisco, Amir, Drusus, and the others. I need to know what they think and whether they are willing to follow me. It's already arranged. Ilithyia put down her teacup and pulled out a sheepskin scroll from her sleeve. Tomorrow morning, the training camp will be unsealed. You can go take over. The contracts of the gladiators willing to stay will be transferred to your name. Those who don't want to stay will receive severance pay and be allowed to leave. She paused and added, the money will come from my husband's account. You don't need to worry about it. Thank you, madam. No need to thank me. Ilithyia looked at him, her eyes deepening. Marcus, I'm helping you because I think you have potential. But potential is not the same as strength. The underworld is not an arena. You can't become king just by winning one fight. There are conspiracies, betrayals, and dirty methods you can't even imagine. I know. Good that you know. Ilithyia leaned forward and lowered her voice. My husband is letting you take over the underworld not just for control. He also wants you to clean up some things. What things? Some people and matters that are inconvenient for him to handle personally. Ilithyia's voice became even lower. For example, the owner of Nodi's training camp accidentally died at home last night. The jailer said it was suicide, but you know, in prison it's very easy to make someone commit suicide. Marcus's eyes sharpened. And a few merchants who were too close to Batiatus have also had accidents one after another these days. Ilithyia continued, her tone calm as if talking about the weather. My husband is cleaning up traces, and you are responsible for cleaning up the rest. She stared into Marcus's eyes. Can you do it? Marcus was silent for a moment. I can, he said. But I need to know the bottom line. Which people can be touched, which cannot. I don't want to be thrown away as a discarded piece one day because I killed the wrong person. Ilithyia smiled. With appreciation in her smile. You are very cautious. That's good, she said. The bottom line is you cannot touch people from the senatorial class, you cannot touch people from other provincial governors, and you cannot touch people from the temples. For the rest, as long as it doesn't cause too much commotion, you can deal with them as you wish. Understood. One more thing. Ilithyia stood up, her skirt gently swaying. About Myra. Marcus's heart tightened. She is doing well, but she said she wants to see you. Ilithyia gestured toward the side of the garden. Follow me. She led Marcus away from the pavilion, through the flower bushes, and arrived at a small building on the side wing of the mansion. Pushing open the door, the interior was elegantly decorated with a desk, a soft couch, and several pots of herbs on the window sill. Myra was sitting by the window, holding a medical book in her hands, but clearly not reading it. When she saw Marcus enter, her eyes lit up and she stood up abruptly. Marcus! You two talk. Ilithyia retreated and gently closed the door. Myra threw herself into Marcus's arms and hugged him tightly. Are you okay? Did they make things difficult for you? I'm fine. Marcus patted her back. How about you? I'm okay. Myra said softly, her voice trembling a little. Lady Ilithyia is very good to me. She gave me my own residence and let me continue studying medicine. But I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that this is a trap. Myra raised her head, her eyes a bit red. Marcus, why did Gracchus help us? What is his real purpose? He has his purpose. Marcus held her shoulders. But at least for now, we are safe. Myra, I need you to do something for me. What is it? Stay here. Marcus looked straight into her eyes. Ilithyia trusts you. You can access a lot of information. I need to know Gracchus's movements, know who is opposing him, know the wind direction in the Senate. Myra's face turned pale. You want me to be a spy? Yes. Marcus held her hand tightly. This is very dangerous, but very important. Only by knowing what they are thinking can we protect ourselves. Myra bit her lip and hesitated for a long time, then finally nodded heavily. I promise you. But you must promise me to be careful and to stay alive. I promise. The two talked for a while longer before Marcus left the small building. Ilithyia was still waiting for him in the garden, bending down to smell a rose. Finished talking? Yes. She agreed. She agreed. Ilithyia straightened up and smiled. I knew she would agree. That child likes you and is willing to take risks for you. Marcus didn't respond to that. All right, let's talk about serious matters. Ilithyia's expression became serious. After you take over the training camp tomorrow, your first task will come. What task? The dock area has been unstable lately. Ilithyia said. Several batches of goods have been robbed. They belong to my husband's business. The robbers are very cunning and left almost no traces. I need you to find out who did it and get the goods back or make the robbers disappear. When do you need results? 3 days. Ilithyia held up 3 fingers. The next batch of goods will arrive in port in 3 days. It must be resolved before then. Understood. After leaving the mansion, Marcus quickly walked back to the residence. Octavius and Saxa were waiting in the living room. When they saw him return, both stood up. How did it go? Saxa asked impatiently. Marcus explained the situation. Dock robbery. Saxa raised an eyebrow. Heh, this is testing our worth. Yes. Marcus sat down at the table. So we must do it well. If we do it well, we establish our foothold. If we fail, we become discarded pieces. How do we investigate? Octavius asked practically. First find people. Marcus said. Gisco and the others are familiar with the docks. After taking over the training camp tomorrow, immediately take people there to check. That night, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling in a daze. Taking over the training camp, taking over the underworld, investigating the dock robbery. Every step was like walking on thin ice. One wrong step could mean eternal doom. But he had no way back. He could only move forward. Chapter 49. The heavy main gate of the training ground had its Senate seals torn into pieces. Marcus stood at the entrance, looking up at the familiar sign Batiatus Gladiator Training Camp. The paint was badly peeling, the letters blurred, just as wretched as its unlucky owner's fate. Gisco, Amir, Drusus, and more than a dozen other gladiators stood behind him. These people had different expressions. Gisco was grinning, rubbing his hands in excitement. Amir's eyes darted around, curiously looking at everything. Drusus frowned, the knife scar on his face looking especially deep in the morning light. Some others stood there blankly, not knowing where to put their hands and feet. Let's go in. Marcus took a deep breath and finally spoke. He reached out and pushed open the door. The training ground was a mess. The overseers had run away, the slaves had run away, and anything valuable had been carried off. Water had accumulated in the sand pit. Weapon racks lay on the ground. Most of the cell doors were wide open, everything inside turned upside down, straw mats and rags scattered everywhere. Fuck. Gisco kicked away a broken wooden bucket blocking the way. This place looks like it was robbed by bandits. It was robbed. Drusus squatted down, picked up half a broken sword, and wiped the rust with his finger. As soon as Batiatus fell, many people wanted to take advantage. Anything that could be moved was taken, and what couldn't be moved was smashed. Marcus didn't reply. He walked straight to the center of the training ground and faced everyone. Listen up. Marcus raised his voice. Count the numbers. Those willing to stay, stand on the left. Those who want to leave, stand on the right. Those who stay, I guarantee food, clothes, and monthly pay. Those who leave, each gets 5 denarii as severance pay. From then on, we go our separate ways. The gladiators looked at each other and whispered in low voices. After a while, the crowd began to move. In the end, out of 23 people, 16 stood on the left. Gisco, Amir, and Drusus were all there. A man named Marcus, who had been drugged before and had mostly recovered, also stood over. 7 stood on the right, mostly older ones or those with injuries. Marcus nodded at Saxa. Saxa walked over with a heavy money bag and handed money to each of the 7 one by one. The 7 clutched the money, looked at the training ground one last time with complicated expressions, and left one after another. The main gate bang closed again. Now, only 17 people remained in the training ground: Marcus, Octavius, Saxa, and 14 former gladiators. Good. Marcus patted the dust off his hands, his gaze sweeping across every face. From today onward, this place is no longer called Batiatus Training Camp, nor Gladiator Training Camp. He paused and spoke clearly, word by word, this place is called Shadow. Shadow. Amir repeated softly, his eyes lighting up. Yes, Shadow. Marcus nodded. We are no longer gladiators, at least not completely. What we are going to do is far more important and far more dangerous than fighting on the sand. He walked up to the crowd and looked at each one. Gracchus gave us freedom and gave us an opportunity, but opportunities are not free. He wants us to do things for him, things he finds inconvenient to handle personally, clean up opponents, gather intelligence, deal with troubles. Some people's faces showed unease and they exchanged glances. I know what you're thinking. Marcus continued. Out of the wolf's den and into the tiger's mouth, right? But this time it's different. This time, we are not slaves, not tools for others to manipulate. We are partners, at least in name. We have salary, freedom, and choice. He pointed around. This place will be our base from now on. We need to renovate it. Not just a training ground, but also living quarters, warehouses, an intelligence room. We need our own rules and our own discipline. What rules? Drusus asked in his rough voice. 3 rules. Marcus held up 3 fingers. First, do not betray your brothers. Second, do not harm the innocent. Third, do not take orders from anyone except me. The last sentence landed like a stone in water. Everyone froze. Then, what about Gracchus? Gisco asked hesitantly. Gracchus is our employer, not our master. Marcus said firmly. He gives money, we do the work. But how we do it and when we do it is up to me. If he asks us to go die or do anything unconscionable, we can refuse. Will he agree to that? He must agree. Marcus said calmly but with an unquestionable tone. Because we have value. But let me be clear, if any of you still want to leave now, it's still possible. Once you stay, you are a member of Shadow and must follow Shadow's rules. No one moved. The training ground was deathly quiet. Very good. Marcus nodded. Now, assign tasks. He turned to Gisco. Gisco, you are responsible for training. Repair the sand pit, set up the weapon racks. From today, 3 hours of basic training and 2 hours of tactical coordination every day. We must not only know how to fight, but also how to coordinate, how to scout, and how to infiltrate. Understood. Gisco grinned and rubbed his hands. We should have been doing this long ago. Drusus. Marcus looked at the oldest gladiator. You are responsible for internal affairs. Arrange living quarters, distribute supplies, manage money and food. Make a list of places in the training ground that need repair. I will ask Gracchus for money. Drusus nodded steadily. Leave it to me, boss. Amir. Marcus looked at the youngest one. You are responsible for intelligence. Take 2 clever brothers. From today, get familiar with every street, every tavern, every dock in Capua. I want to know who has grudges with whom and who is doing what business. Amir's eyes lit up and he straightened his back. Yes. I guarantee I'll find out everything clearly. Marcus. Marcus looked at the man who had been drugged before and had mostly recovered. You take 3 people and are responsible for security. The training ground must be patrolled day and night. If any unfamiliar faces approach, stop them first and ask clearly. Understood. Marcus nodded forcefully. The rest will temporarily follow Octavius and Sax's command. Marcus said. Assist them in their tasks. After assigning everything, Marcus clapped his hands. All right, get to work. Clean up the training ground today. Starting tomorrow, we have real work to do. The crowd scattered with a whoosh and got busy. Marcus turned and walked toward the main building, Batiatus's former office. Pushing open the door, it was even messy inside. The desk was overturned, drawers pulled open, sheepskin scrolls scattered all over the floor. The tapestry on the wall had been torn down, revealing damp and moldy walls behind it. But one thing hadn't been taken: the iron safe in the corner. It was heavy and locked tightly. Batiatus had left in a hurry and clearly hadn't had time to open it. "Octavius!" Marcus called. The giant thud walked in, almost filling the door frame. "Can you open it?" Octavius squatted down, checked the lock, then grabbed both sides of the safe door with his hands, took a deep breath, and his muscles bulged with a crack. Creak. The harsh sound of metal deforming rang out. The lock didn't open, but the door was forcibly bent, revealing a gap. Marcus reached in and pulled out a pile of things. Several sheepskin scrolls, account books recording Batiatus's business dealings. A small wooden box. Opening it revealed a bag of gems and dozens of gold coins, gleaming temptingly in the dim light. And a stack of contracts, the Gladiator's slave contracts. Marcus flipped through them and found his own. He took out all the contracts, walked to the fireplace, struck a flint, and lit a fire. Flames whooshed up and devoured the papers filled with slaves' names one by one. From now on, there were no slaves in the training ground, only people who chose to stay. Chapter 50. Found anything good? Saxa's voice came from the doorway. She leaned against the door frame, tilting her head to look. "Money, account books, and this." Marcus reached into the very bottom of the safe and pulled out a small clay bottle, the same one that had contained the sedative powder before. He opened the cork and brought it to his nose to smell. There was still a bit of residue, colorless and odorless. "Keep it." Marcus plugged the cork back in. "Might come in handy someday." He put away the gold coins and gems, and set the account books aside separately. These were evidence. They might be useful later. In the afternoon, the training ground was roughly cleaned up. The water in the sand pit was drained and replaced with fresh sand. The weapon racks were set up again. Although some were crooked, they could still be used. The cells were cleaned and laid with new straw mats. The kitchen hadn't been restored yet, but Drusus had bought bread and salted meat from outside, enough to fill everyone's stomachs. In the evening, Marcus gathered everyone in the courtyard. "The first thing is settled," he said. "The second thing, the dock robbery." He briefly explained the situation. Several batches of Gracchus's goods had been robbed at the dock. The identity of the robbers was unknown. It had to be investigated within 3 days. "How do we investigate?" Gisco scratched his head. 3 steps. Marcus held up 3 fingers. "First, Amir, you take people to the dock taverns and ask around if there have been any unfamiliar faces lately, or if anyone has suddenly gotten rich. Second, Marcus, you take people to wander around the dock area and look for any unusual activity at the warehouses. Third." He looked at Saxa and Octavius. "You two, come with me to the docks tonight for a stroll." "A stroll?" Saxa raised an eyebrow. "In the middle of the night, strolling at the docks?" "Yes, a stroll," Marcus said. "The robbers have to sell the stolen goods. I know a few black markets in Capua." When night had completely fallen, 3 figures quietly slipped out of the training ground. The dock area of Capua was completely different from its daytime bustle. Cargo ships lay quietly on the sea like sleeping giant beasts. A few sparse wind lanterns hung on the piers, their dim yellow light barely illuminating the uneven ground underfoot. The air was filled with the smell of fish, seaweed, and some indefinable rotten odor. Marcus and the other 2, wearing dark clothes, moved like 3 shadows through the narrow alleys between the warehouses. Saxa led the way. She had already familiarized herself with Capua thoroughly these past few days. "The black market is behind the old fish market," she said in a low voice. "On the surface, they are a few run-down shops. But underground there are spaces where anything can be sold and anything can be bought as long as you have money." "You been there?" Octavius asked in his deep voice. "Once," Saxa said. "Bought a short blade there. The people there are not easy to mess with." The old fish market had long been abandoned. Half of the wooden sheds had collapsed, and the ground was covered with dried fish scales and garbage. But deeper inside, a few stone houses that still looked relatively intact stood there, with extinguished oil lamps hanging at the doors. Saxa walked to one of the doors, raised her hand, and knocked 5 times in a specific rhythm. After a while, the door opened a crack. A turbid eye looked out from inside, its whites covered with bloodshot veins. "Buying goods," Saxa said. "What goods?" "Hard goods." Saxa took out a gold coin from her bosom and waved it in front of the crack. The gold coin flashed in the dim light. The door creaked open. Inside was even darker than outside, lit only by a small flickering oil lamp. Behind the counter sat a skinny old man who looked like a skeleton, his face wrinkled so deeply it could trap flies. He raised his eyes and looked at the 3 of them, his gaze lingering on Marcus's face for an extra second. "New faces," the old man said slowly, his voice hoarse like a broken bellows. "First time here," Marcus said. "Do you know the rules?" "Don't know." "Please tell us." "Don't ask about origins, don't ask about destinations. Pay for goods when you see them. Money and goods exchanged cleanly. Once you leave this door, no one knows anyone." The old man spoke word by word. "Those who break the rules, have all been fed to the fish." "Understood." Marcus nodded. The old man took out a wooden box from under the counter and opened it. Inside were a few pieces of jewelry. The craftsmanship was crude, but the materials were decent silver inlaid with cheap gems. "Received these a couple days ago," the old man said. "Cheap. 5 denarii and you can take them all." Marcus picked up a bracelet and examined it carefully. There were marks on it, as if it had been violently pried off. "Anything else?" "That depends on what you want." "Big stuff," Marcus said. "Cloth, spices, ivory, anything like that recently?" The old man narrowed his eyes, vigilance flashing in the slits. "You guys are buyers or?" "Buyers," Marcus said calmly. "A batch of goods was robbed. We want to get it back, or find the people who robbed it." The old man fell silent. The oil lamp's flame crackled once, casting flickering shadows on his face. "This matter is not easy to handle." He finally spoke, his voice even lower. "The docks have been unstable lately. Several groups are fighting for territory. The goods you mentioned might have already been scattered." "Where did they scatter to?" "Went south." The old man leaned closer and spoke almost in a whisper. "I heard, they went to Sicily." "Sicily? Pirate territory." Marcus's heart stirred. "Who handled it?" The old man shook his head repeatedly. "Don't know, and don't dare to know." Marcus took out 2 gold coins from his bosom and placed them on the counter. "Think again." The old man stared at the gold coins. His throat moved, and struggle flashed in his single eye. "There's a middleman called One Eye. He finally gave in. He lives in the abandoned shipyard at dock number 3. He might know something." "Thanks." When the 3 left the black market, the night was even deeper. The sea wind blew over, carrying a bone-chilling cold. "Go to the shipyard now." Saxa rubbed her arms and asked. "Now?" Marcus nodded.